Hello, my name is Connor Leach, and I will be comparing and contrasting World War One from World War Two. I picked out three topics that I'll be using, and the first one I would like to talk about is technology that was used. So, technology that was used in World War One was pretty much very simple. One of the first pieces of technology that was made during World War One was the tank, and it was made by the British, and it was called the British Mark One, and it was made around 1915. This was used basically during trench warfare, which was the main fighting style used in World War One. It was used to go across no man's land, which is a space between the trenches that was destroyed by the heavy fire from both sides. Germany had made flamethrowers. This was used in trench warfare also, and it was a safer way instead of throwing grenades. Because grenades would destroy the land, the flamethrowers would just burn the bodies, and it was used by the troops in February of 1915. And another big thing, another big technology that was used was poison gas. And poison gas was used by both sides of the war, but Germany ended up pioneering it on a very large scale, and they were using very advanced chemical weapons for the time. But the British had fired back by making these bullets called tracer bullets. So at night or in the dark, the rounds would emit a small trail of light from the flammable material that was used inside the bullets. Now we're getting into World War II's technology. And basically, World War II, the biggest thing that was made was the atomic bomb. And the atomic bomb would release a huge amount of energy from a small amount of matter, which results in a short and long term destruction of the area. Um, Another big thing that was used in World War II was the advancements of old technology. Pretty much, they they made guns that was a lot lighter and easier to use, and also they were very powerful, a lot more powerful than the ones from World War One. They also had mortars. They had advanced torpedoes, and planes were also advancing. Uh, for example, the B-52 bombers and fighter jets. To name two would be the Spitfire and the Hurricane, which were very popular during the time. Also, in World War II, the creation of radars were used, and these radars would use radio waves to determine the range, altitude, direction, and the speed of any nearby objects. And on top of radars, they also had sonars for pretty much underwater, and they would use sound waves by sending them out and waiting for them to come back. And that's how they would determine a location or, what was around them in the water. So basically, World War II had much more advanced technology of what they had in World War One, and also the amount of deaths also went up because of this advanced technology due to battle instead of disease. Which majority of people who died in World War One were from disease because of how unhealthy the trenches were. So they would just be in close quarters or with each other. They would be in very unhealthy living spaces. So that's another big reason on why the advancements in technology is a negative, but it's also a positive because they're able to protect themselves more. They're able to fight back, um, but the death rate went up in battle instead of disease. Now to talk about World War One's fighting styles, which was very interesting. Like I said earlier, the main thing that they used during World War One was trench warfare. Primarily was used on land, so they didn't really have much. It really didn't involve the colonies. It only like the fighting stayed in Europe during World War One. So they didn't have much of an artillery back then. I mean, they had planes, but it just wasn't advanced, and it just wasn't effective, and it was just very inefficient. The tactics that they had really depended on mass production of war materials, and they focused on crippling economies and morale of enemies by making them spend all their money for the war. World War II, on the other hand, pretty much just was a bloodbath. They had missiles, and they were used very frequently. Germany had a very sneaky tactic called the Blitzkrieg tactics, and Blitzkrieg stands for lightning strike or assault. And this fighting tactic was used to catch the enemies by surprise. Uh, Another big thing that was involved in the Blitzkrieg tactics was rapid and devastating mobility. So pretty much just moving very fast on the land with tanks, infantry, and they also had an aerial bombardment. So basically, while they were coming in, their planes would fly above and just bomb them, bomb everybody who wasn't Nazi Germany. So in World War II, the fighting styles were a lot more vicious. Yeah, so a lot of more people died from battle, like I said earlier, because of these vicious fighting styles used by Germany. Majority of the people to die were Soviets, and that was because of these Blitzkrieg tactics. And finally, to wrap it up, World War One government was led by Kaiser Wilhelm II. So Kaiser meant emperor, but he was also the king of Prussia from 1988 to 1918. He's one of the most recognizable figures from World War One. He'd gained a reputation from a swaggering militaristic through his speeches and ill-advised newspaper interviews. But Kaiser Wilhelm was forced to abdicate in 1918 before the war. Wilhelm was very important, but after the war, he started to play a very limited role. When he did abdicate, they forced him to spend the rest of his life in exile in the Netherlands, where he did die at the age of 82. Now, when Hitler came into power, it was through democratic ways. Pretty much, he would give speeches, and the people liked him, and so they put him in power. When Hitler came into power, though, the government kind of shifted to a totalitarian dictatorship where the Nazi Party took control. He was called Chancellor in 1933, but in 1934 he was changed to Führer. So basically, what led to World War II was Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939. And by 1941, Nazi forces had occupied much of Europe.